So if I said iron sharpens iron, would that mean anything to you? That comes out of Psalms 27:17. It is supposedly, potentially, the most cited biblical line in secular leadership books. Iron sharpens iron. I doubt you know of anyone outside church, anyone in the U.S. probably over a certain age maybe, that hasn't heard that phrase. Proverbs, to an extent, we need to remember, is for everybody, right? You can fear God or you can not fear God. Proverbs are just that. They're proverbs. They're not laws. They're not necessarily even commandments, right? These are things that are wise. These are wise things to live by. God made us. He knows what's good for us. And this is how we should live. If Psalms is a wisdom book, we've classified it that way, right? Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Song of Solomon. What was the wisdom? What did we learn to do in Psalms? What was that? Praise God. How do you effectively praise God, specifically in my mind, during when? During what?
Give up something.
What's that?
Give up something.
Okay, give up something. If we are in times of trouble, we can pray to God, praise God honestly. If we are in times of anxiety, we can praise God honestly. The Psalms teaches us that. If we feel bad just in general, we know that from example of Psalms, how we can worship and praise God honestly. We can locate ourselves honestly in all things to God. And that's a safe place to do that. That God has said through David, through all these other authors in Psalms, he wants to hear from us no matter what we're feeling. And there's wisdom in that. How do we do that? Psalms showed us that. In Proverbs, I would think of Proverbs more as intellectual wisdom, okay? Intellectual wisdom, and we're going to get into that a little bit. Whereas Ecclesiastes would be more philosophical wisdom, meaning, what is the point of life? What does all this mean, right? That's more Ecclesiastes. Proverbs is not really that way. It's how do I operate day to day to day. When we get to Song of Solomon, I'm going to suggest that the wisdom is, well, how do we deal with natural feelings between men and women? Human feelings between men and women. And there's wisdom in the Song of Solomon about how we can address those feelings and those actions toward one another. So that's my little short form of that. But Psalms, if it was about emotional honesty, Proverbs would be more like daily choices, habits that we choose to observe throughout our life so that we might have a better life. So we just think about an instruction manual as you're going through Proverbs. Skillful, righteous living, wisdom applied to everyday life. There are a number of sections in Proverbs, primarily written by who? Solomon, but he's not the only writer in Proverbs. So we're gonna look at that. We've got a little section that seemingly just says it's written by written's the wrong word, that the wisdom was provided by wise men. Solomon seemingly says, the wise men say, and so we're going to have a little breakdown about that. And I did not get my little clicker. Here we go. I'm glad I didn't fall down doing that, now that I think about it. All right, so make sure I'm up here on the next page. Oh yeah, good, I'm going to finish that up too. We're going to look at wise men. We're going to look at Agur, who did chapter 30, and then Lemuel, King Lemuel in chapter 31 is the last chapter, and that one we all know, that's wisdom he got from who? His mom, it says, his mother. And it finishes with the worthy woman, but it's not all about the worthy woman, but the chapter starts with King Lemuel, wisdom from my mom, essentially. We're going to look at that in a second about some potential things with that. So what I want to remember, though, is if we think about natural laws like gravity or perpetual motion, can you doubt that gravity exists? You can, but it's not going to matter, right? It's going to exist. Perpetual motion or centripetal force or these kind of things, that if they're out there, it doesn't matter whether you believe in them or not, they exist. I would submit to you there are some things that principles, these life principles of Proverbs, maybe they're not guarantees. Think about economic principles. No matter what maybe government people might say about economic principles, supply and demand, they exist. Supply affects demand, affects the cost, affects other things. And you can look at it, and that's just the way that these principles exist and work together. Does it mean that tomorrow something can't happen economically for no reason whatsoever? No, it can. But then often we look back and we see, oh, now it's adjusting, because that's what happens with supply and demand and price and value and those kinds of things. So Proverbs, I believe, are like moral and ethical principles, right? It doesn't mean it's always been, the bad guy wins sometimes. I'm sorry. They just do. But not in the end. But we're not, Proverbs is not all talking about the end. It's based in social, human realities, but it isn't just a book of moralism. It is based on God's principles, God's desires. God is the foundation. So if you start thinking, oh, Matt thinks it's a big book on philosophy like Socrates. No, these are God-given principles by which we should all live. Let's look at the very first chapter together. Proverbs 1. You're probably already there. What does Proverbs say the purpose is? The Proverbs, what is this? It's the Proverbs of Solomon, the son of David, king of Israel. So we know who's writing it. What's it for? To know wisdom and instruction. Well, what does all that mean? But okay. So to know wisdom and instruction, to discern the sayings of understanding, to receive instruction in wise behavior, righteousness, justice, and equity, to give prudence to the naive, to the youth knowledge and discretion. A wise man will hear and increase in learning, and a man of understanding will acquire wise counsel to understand a proverb and a figure, the words of the wise and their riddles. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. And then this verse, hear, my son, your father's instruction, and do not forsake your mother's teaching. So does he give a pretty good introduction about, hey, why are we reading this together? We are here because we want to know wisdom and instruction. We want to know all of these things that wise men know. One of my favorite lines is a wise man will hear and increase in learning. Do wise men already know everything? No. How do they become wise? They continue to increase in learning. They start off just like we all do. They start off stupid, right? Everyone is born to this earth ignorant. They don't even know how to speak. They don't know how to take care of themselves. And some choose to increase in knowledge and wisdom, and then you see some of them get to about age 13 and they stop. I don't know why that is. Don't live that way, right? We all have the opportunity, whether we are at 13 or 30 or, how old are you, Gail? Never mind. Or 60 to continue to learn and add wisdom in our lives. And we should. Please don't be the one that gets done. Don't. The Proverbs is a great place. In fact, my dad used to read a proverb every day. There's 31 days in some months, right? He would read a proverb to start his day every day. So on January 1st, it would be the first one. On January 2nd, it would be the second one. And so then chapter 30 and 31, or chapter 31, he didn't get every single month. But that's okay, because he said mostly apply to women. So he was okay with that. But it's funny. But he said, and I kind of believe this, I think if you try it, you'll get something every single day out of this chapter that you read, because it is about every day of your life. Did that happen to us today already? Yeah, we had two things in this very service. The most written about thing in Proverbs, does anybody know what it is? The biggest topic, repeated more than any other. Take a guess. Take a guess based on this evening's worship that we had, the singing and prayers and whatnot. Words. Who said that? Yes, words. Thanks, man. Words. More than any other topic in Proverbs, words. The very first song that was led, words. The topic tonight was words. Chris Negley, and by the way, I thought that was really good that she did that, chose to do that. Everybody has that forum to do that if they want to, do something publicly. Words, right? Both to offend and to heal. Words. If you read through Proverbs, it's going to tell you how to deal with words every day. And almost every chapter has something to say about it. But verse 8, if we look at that as far as how it's structured, hear, my son, your father's instruction. Look down to verse 10. My son, if sinners entice you, do not consent. Look at chapter 2. Turn the page. We're going to do a few of these. How's it start? My son. Chapter 3, how's it start? My son. Chapter 4, how's it start? My son. Oh, by the way, partway through chapter 3, I've got one underlined. Verse 11, my son. Who's this written to at the beginning? His son, his offspring. Now, should we, men and women, certainly. He's writing it to his son. That's the time period we're in. But this is something, he's concerned. He wants to pass on this wisdom to his son. We kind of know from history that his son probably didn't absorb a lot of this, right? But we can. His, spiritual offspring in a sense, his people down line from him, learning from him, whatever that is, we have the ability. So these are things he's concerned about. His son, his son, his son. Wisdom personified comes out with, he wants his son to know wisdom. He wants his son to walk the path of righteousness. He warns right away against adultery, and his son's interaction with women come into this over and over and over. How to approach women in a healthy way. Fear of the Lord. Let me go up here to this outline then. I'll do it like that. Okay. We'll go through it. Okay. 1 through 22. Chapters 1 through 22. Very clear. Written by Solomon. Okay? If you get to partway through, and let me see what chapter that was. There's a little bit of a break in the way he writes a little bit. Let's see. I think it was... Well, I may not find it. But basically, it goes from wisdom to Proverbs a little bit. Maybe I'll find that a little later on instead of just searching for it. I know time is limited. I've got it written down in my Bible there. But anyway, but basically that whole first 22, most of this 22nd chapter, very clear. Solomon is passing along wisdom. Okay? Now it's in the Bible. It means God approved wisdom. Right? Does it mean that everything that Solomon is repeating maybe came straight from God, meaning it wasn't already in the world? It probably was already in the world, also from God, right? And if you look, what is up there, 22:17 to 24:34, there is a section, let's go there, because we're not going to spend a lot of time on it, but I think as you study Proverbs, it's good to look at these in this way. 24, verse 17, verse 17, 22:17, sorry. Incline your ear and hear the words of the wise, and apply your mind to my knowledge. That's repeated later on one other time. And so a lot of people kind of think, because of some other writings, that these are worldly wisdom in a sense, meaning it wasn't given to Solomon in a vacuum. That these things, we know that everybody coming off of the ark knew God. Everyone coming from there knew God. And you can apply these principles forever, but Solomon potentially captured them for us here, repeating them somewhat in a godly way. We can also see then in chapter 25 through 29, if you turn over there, chapter 25, these also are Proverbs of Solomon. This is verse 1 there in chapter 25. These also are Proverbs of Solomon, which the men of Hezekiah, the king of Judah, transcribed. Okay, so these are different Proverbs than the other Proverbs that were there. And it starts in about chapter 25, and it goes on to about chapter 29. And then we're going to look at chapter 30 and 31 a little later. But chapter 30 begins the words of Agur, the son of Jacob, the oracle, which, by the way, I think that means that Agur was the oracle. So you can kind of read it that maybe they're saying Jacob was. You know why I don't know? Because nobody knows who these people were. Okay? So we know it was Agur, the son of Jacob, the oracle, and then we're going to read this later on. It's one of my, I love all of these, but we're going to spend more time on that one if we have time. But it's quite possible he wasn't even Jewish. It's not a Jewish name. They don't know who he was. It's not recorded in the Bible or anywhere else. Jewish tradition, I think, says, like maybe Northern Arabia or something, but they really don't know. And so we just know it's here. Now, does that mean, it's still God's. God put it in his word and preserved it for us. So this is godly wisdom. But some of what he says is very interesting there. And then look at the first part of verse 1 of chapter 31. Different person still. The words of King Lemuel, the oracle, a little similar there, right, to the language that was used in chapter 30. Agur the son, the oracle, okay? King Lemuel, the oracle, which his mother taught him. Something a little bit interesting about this. Did I put it up there? I did. Lemuel means for God. So some people think that maybe King Lemuel was King Solomon, meaning he was for God. And that would mean that maybe he got this wisdom, that he wrote down for David, Solomon he got from his mom, David's wife Bathsheba. Does that make sense? If that is the case. But it could also be King Lemuel from someplace that we just don't know. Nobody knows. There's no historical context for him at all. But we do know the wisdom is worthwhile because it's in Proverbs. So don't ever let that distract you, not knowing something about the specific author. If it's here, God has protected it, preserved it for us. Okay, so that's the basic outline that we're going to hit here a little bit. In the first part, that chapters 10 to 29, the very first part we've talked about is all to his son. Basic wisdom over and over and over again, how to live your life, and we're going to break down some of that later on if I have time. This 10 to 29, there are hundreds, chapter 10 to 29, hundreds of two-line Proverbs. 2 lines. The beginning of Proverbs is primarily to a son. The entire book, written by all sorts of different kinds of people. The second part, all the way to chapter 22, it talks about the simple, the young, the wise, kings, fools, all sorts of people. It's for everyone, not just his son. And it talks about speech and work and money and really anything you could think of. 1 Kings 4:32 says that Solomon spoke 3,000 proverbs. Okay, 3,000 of them. How many of you think are in Proverbs? About 1,000. About 1,000 proverbs in Proverbs. So we know there are a lot of proverbs out there that Solomon also wrote that weren't preserved for us. But most of them, or a lot of them, are here. Not most of them. A lot of them are here. When we got to 30 and 31. Okay, good. That went a little more quickly than I thought, than I was concerned that it might. There are about 10 major themes in Proverbs. Okay? And if we can get through these, then we're going to come back and do chapter 30 in detail. The first one, look at chapter 1, verse 7, chapter 9, verse 10. Somebody yell out what that is about. What would the theme be? It's pretty simple. It's kind of the foundation for the whole thing. Fear of the Lord. Fear of the Lord. 1:7. Fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. The chapter 9, verse 10. Beginning of wisdom. Where is the beginning of wisdom? The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. Several times, many, many times, that is repeated. That theme is repeated in Proverbs. Look at chapter 2, verse 20. Chapter 2, verse 20. So you will walk in the way of good men and keep to the paths of righteousness, for the upright will live in the land, and the blameless will remain in it. But the wicked will be cut off from the land, and the treacherous will be uprooted from it. Many times in Proverbs, these righteous versus wickedness. Wisdom as a path that you need to get on and stay on. That success isn't random. Okay, now, time and chance affect us all. Like I quoted it, 9/11, right? Remember from on Sunday in Ecclesiastes. Yes, time and chance affect us all. These are not guarantees. But if you are on the path, the wise path, your life, in theory, should have an arc like this. How to say? Asheville, it's uphill, but it's not all uphill, right? Does that make sense? So your life should have this trajectory if it's wise, even though there's going to be a lot of this. The thing is, we don't always know necessarily when we're at this point or this point. But if we're on the path of wisdom, Proverbs says that's our choice. We get to choose righteousness or wickedness. Success in life isn't random. There is a pattern to it. Does that make sense? Now, time and chance affect us all, no doubt. And when we are in terrible circumstances, when we feel awful, then Proverbs doesn't necessarily help us deal with that, except in an intellectual sense. Where do we learn how to deal with that? Psalms, right? You present that to God. When it's not going the way that you think it should, present that emotionally, honestly to God. Words and speech. I mentioned that was the biggest. More than 90 Proverbs address the mouth, tongue, lips, or communication. More than 90 of them. One time, long time ago, that's probably 20 years ago, we took turns at Taylor's preaching. But I was young. I think I was 3. We took turns preaching on different subjects of Proverbs. And they had a sheet. We went up there and just signed up for one, whatever it was. There's probably 10 of them. Mine was speech, words. But the funny thing is, I don't remember who went first. I remember Keith Lyons. It might have been him. It might have been some of these other guys. But everybody, it seemed like after the very first one, it was like theirs was the worst sin, right? Oh no, mine is the most important thing. And it was kind of funny, not in a bad way, but it was kind of humorous. Well, then I started reading Proverbs. They're still in my Bible today. All these different places that it talks about speech or words or what. And I thought, well, that's the most important one. Here's how I justified it. Okay. How did sin enter the world? Tell me somehow, how did sin enter the world? I might mess with you. You might get it right. I don't know. Sandy's got to look on your phone. How did sin enter the world? How did sin enter the world? How did it come to man? How did man sin the first time? Thank you. From a lie, right? Everyone, mostly you think, because, they disobeyed God. They ate the fruit, and they weren't supposed to eat the fruit. And then Adam blamed Eve, but it all started with a lie, this speech, what was done incorrectly. So if you really start tying it back, everything ties into speech at some point, it seems like to me, and Proverbs definitely backs that up. You can look, Proverbs, by the way, we talked about James tonight, right, from the pulpit, and that covers a lot about speech. Look at Proverbs 18:21. Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruit. Does it define the it? Ooh. You love life or you love death? How do you know? Well, you're eating that fruit. You could eat the one that leads to life. You can eat the one that goes to death. But that fruit of the Spirit, we often say, you see your faith. You see if you are a Christian in your fruit. Well, clearly here, life and death are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruit. Look at chapter 15:1. And we could do this all day. I'm not going to, but chapter 15, verse 1. A gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. Do you find that to be true every single day? I do. Have you ever had anyone that you knew? How do they do that? They take this crazy thing where these people are angry and they settle it down. They take the wind out of it. And then you meet others that you've got something that's kind of tense, and it's like they throw a hand grenade in there by what they say. And now you've got something that's very hard to deal with. You can turn away wrath. I would say you can turn away wrath with how you speak, or you can stir up more anger with how you speak, and it's all in the control of your tongue. Honest speech equals wisdom, and deceit equals ruin. Yes?
For the classes, Proverbs 15:1 is one that I would encourage all of us to make sure that it's talked about and done, because from little bitty, it's a habit, and you grow into it.
It is. I don't know if you can hear what she's saying. This is a great verse to bring out if you're teaching kids of all ages, right? They all need to learn how to control what they say. I don't know if you know this. It's been a number of years ago now. The elders and preachers went through, it could have been Ben, maybe it was Pre-Joe, went through a book called Crucial Conversations together. It's not a Bible study book. There's godly principles in it. But basically, how do you deal with a conversation when it starts becoming crucial, when it's been important? How do you recognize if all of a sudden you've said something that you didn't know was all that important to someone? How do you recognize when it is? They would say a silence or violence, meaning like fight or flight. Silence being people might clam up and never say anything. And you wonder, well, how'd that get shut down in that way? Why aren't we talking anymore? Or violence meaning angry words. Well, how do you control or recognize it? Spend a lot of time in Proverbs. You don't have to read that other book. In fact, the last fourth of it was kind of funny. It was like, they say this, you say this. If they say this, you go, okay, that never happens. Nobody ever does this. But the principles were really good, but they were very much along the line of controlling your speech and recognizing others. The other thing I'd say if you're teaching kids, the point we mentioned just a second ago, the path. Good habits start young. We're doing, in fact, I wonder if wealth and generosity is coming up. I skipped one. Wealth and generosity is in here, and we're going to have a whole meeting coming up here about biblical principles for money. Not should you open up a 401k or a Roth IRA or whatever. Not like that, right? But what do you do? Set aside and save for giving on the first day of the week. Okay, well, that implies that you have a budget of some kind. What does the Bible say about good financial decisions? It doesn't make it matter if you make $20,000 a year or $200,000 a year. You can still make good financial decisions. It doesn't matter what TikTok may be saying right now. There are plenty of people doing just fine, making very little money because they are diligent in how they use it and what they prioritize in life. And Proverbs would cover that a lot. Let's look at chapter 13, verse 11. Chapter 13, 11. Wealth obtained by fraud dwindles, but the one who gathers by labor increases it. Does that make sense? If you defraud someone, you probably don't have your priorities straight. Easy come, easy go. You ever heard of that? I don't think it's Proverbs, but ever heard of that? Easy come, easy go. That's what happens. You get big hit. People hit the lottery. What do? You read about them in the news later on that they've lost it all and they're broke and they're worse than they were to begin with because of crazy lewd living or bad decisions. They never had Proverbs in their back pocket. Look at chapter 21, verse 5. The king's heart is like channels. Verse 5. The plans of the diligent lead surely to advantage, but everyone who is hasty comes surely to poverty. Surely, even in this one, they're all reliable principles, but this one gets reinforced a little bit. Good planning, more than average, leads to good results. Good priorities leads to good results. Get back to it. The plans of the diligent. What does yours say there? Does it say diligent? Does anybody say anything else? The plan. What's diligent mean? Hardworking. Great. What else does it mean? Responsible. Good. Keep going. Give me another word or two.
Patient.
What was that one? Patient. Careful. There was one more over here. What's that? Dedicated. I like all of those. Okay. Does it sound like somebody's just going through life haphazardly? No. Intentional, right? It's very intentional. If you're diligent, you don't get up. Okay. How many people make a New Year's resolution? I think they're hilarious. Okay. So January comes around. What are you going to do? I'm going to go to the gym. This whole year, I'm going to go to the gym. When I go to the gym in January, it's the worst time to ever go to the gym because it's full. Everything's full in January, right? By July, it's fine again. But maybe even March, it's fine again. Why? Because people have good intentions, but they're not diligent, right? They're not looking to Proverbs every day. They're not leading a life by choosing a path that goes on the arc that they want. What they're doing is they're kind of flip-flopping around. Does that make sense? So the plans of the diligent lead to success. Not just a plan leads to success. Persistence would be an excellent word for that. Someone who is persistent might be called diligent as long as they are persistent doing something good, right? If they're persistent banging their head against the wall, maybe that would be not as good. It's a great word. Look at, in fact, we could keep going there. That's work and diligence. That's why I was thinking about that word. That's funny. It's a whole other topic. 21 verse 5. Look at, that was 21:5. Look at chapter 11, 24. Chapter 11, verse 24. Oh, you know what? I've got some of these up here. I could have done that. There we go. So we skipped work and diligence. But look at chapter 11, verse 24. There is one who scatters and yet increases all the more. And there is one who withholds what is justly due, and yet it results only in want. The generous man will be prosperous, and he who waters will himself be watered. So, generosity. There are some that scatters, and they still reap. They get even more. It's talking about a generous man. Who believes in the wealth doctrine? You ever heard of the wealth doctrine? There's one time representing a bank and selling a foreclosed building, and a church of sorts came, and they were certain God was going to enable them to buy this multi-million-dollar building because of the wealth doctrine. They were going to pray the money in, okay? And there wasn't a very big church. It was like 10 people that came and started, and they put up money. I mean, they believed it. It did not work. It didn't work. Felt bad. In fact, the bank let them extend it for another $20,000, and then eventually the bank kept their $40,000, right? Because the bank did not believe in the wealth doctrine either, evidently, right? It doesn't mean people don't believe it, and I admire anybody that's got some faith. I understand that. It's hard to hold on to good faith, but it needs to be based in good biblical principles. But I would say that Proverbs does say that if you're generous, it's more likely to come back to you, right? It's not a rule. It's not a law. It's not, if you do this, God is going to bless you. If you give the Taylor Church of Christ, God's going to increase that by tenfold. It's nothing like that. The Bible doesn't teach that. But it does say if you're generous, it's more likely to come back, right? And so, you can take it too far. But the 11, 24, 25 right there, I knew I was going to go too slow. The one who scatters and yet increases all the more, and there is one who withholds what is justly due, and yet it results only in want. The generous man will be prosperous, and he who waters will himself be watered. Okay, so then you've got work and diligence, relationships and community, self-control, justice and leadership, sexual purity and faithfulness, wisdom as a woman, not just in the last chapter, right, but also in chapter 8 and 9, and also chapter 5 and 7, somewhat of strange women. It's relating wisdom to a woman in a couple of places. It's sort of an interesting study if you ever want to do that. Chapter 31 spends a great deal of time, and in my opinion, other than when we start talking about Song of Solomon, which is by far the most written from a woman's perspective in the Bible, but chapter 31 gives a perspective of, what do we say? What his mother taught him. The words of King Lemuel, the oracle, which his mother taught him. So these are wise words from a woman of the time, his mother. And I don't know of anything that any woman ever wants, the godly woman wants read about her when she dies, than her children, verse 28, her children rise up and bless her, her husband also, and he praises her, saying, many daughters have done nobly, but you excel them all. I just love that. It's beautiful. Now, charm is deceitful and beauty is vain, but a woman who fears the Lord, she shall be praised. It's awesome. And that's from a woman to her son who passed it on to all of us. I want to look at chapter 30 with just a couple of minutes. I realize I don't have much. I love the way this begins. Look at verse 2. I think I've said this. Surely I am more stupid than any man, and I do not have the understanding of a man, neither have I learned wisdom, nor do I have the knowledge of the Holy One. But now look at this verse. And if you're teaching a kid's class, I think you ought to point towards Christ. We talk about this in every class you have, okay? So now think about this. Who has ascended into heaven and descended? Who has gathered the wind in his fists? Who has wrapped the waters in his garment? Who has established all the ends of the earth? And you think about this. This could be God talking. We could be talking about God. What is his name or his son's name? Surely you know. And I love that as a messianic part of Proverbs. I don't know anything, he says. I don't know anything. But do you know this? Who knows about this? And I love that. From the oracle to us. What is his name or his son's name who has done all of these things? Well, his name is God. His son is Jesus Christ. Verse 5. Every word of God is tested. He is a shield to those who take refuge in him. Do not add to his words, or he will reprove you, and you will be proved a liar. Great verse on studying the Bible. Just like the end of Revelation, right? Don't add to it. Don't take it away. The other thing he's known for, sort of the poetry that other Jewish people are known for, even in the Bible they use it, which is one reason it may just be an actual Israelite, a Jew writing this. 2 things I ask of you, do not refuse me before I die. Keep deception and lies. Oh, no, I'm sorry, this is not it. He does a poetry thing later on. I love this part too. But 2 things I ask of you, don't refuse this from me. Verse 8, keep deception and lies far from me. That was one, I think. Yeah. Then give me neither poverty nor riches. Feed me with the food that is my portion, that I not be full and deny you and say, who is the Lord? Or that I not be in want and steal and profane the name of my God. What do you want to leave your kids? You give them money, you're well off, you're doing good things. You want to leave them a life of luxury? Or do you want to leave them a life where they have to be diligent and work and make good decisions and make good habits? That's a big, strange thing, because I work for my kids. I would like not to have my kids have to work as hard as I did or do or whatever that might be. But at the same time, is that necessarily good for them? No. It's an age-old argument right back here that don't give me too much. We in the United States have too much. Just saying. Does that mean we're all doomed to hell, damnation? No, I'm not saying that. But we sure are spoiled. Do we rely on God as much as someone who doesn't have much? You think Solomon was wealthy? Solomon did not have indoor plumbing and hot water coming out of the spigot. Now, he had enough servants that probably had some amount of that sometimes. Buckets poured into a pool of some kind. I get up sometimes, I just open the fridge. I get out some meat that Trudy put in there in a Tupperware, and I eat my protein for the day. We are all spoiled. So if we don't think about any other verse, come back to this chapter. Read it twice this week. I don't want to be full and deny you, and yet I don't want to be poor and thus steal. All right. I appreciate y'all. Thank you. I know this is weird classes. We will be talking on Ecclesiastes about the same pace next on Sunday. Thanks.